UVC Chronicles, sing it loud. Echoes of our past, we're proud. From the heart of Bangalore to the world we soar.
Hello to all our viewers and listeners. Welcome to another exciting episode of UVC Chronicles. My name is Varsha Rao and I'm from 5th semester AIML. On today's episode, we are joined by Mr. Raghunandan KS. Raghunandan is an alumnus of the 1988 Mechanical Engineering batch who went on to do Post Graduate Diploma in Management at IIM Calcutta. He then worked at various companies like L&T, IBM and Cisco. He currently serves as the founder and CEO at Elders India and the founders of EldersWealth and Elders Talent. Thank you for joining us today, sir. Welcome to UVC Chronicles. So at UVC Chronicles, we believe that nothing beats a first-hand introduction. So I would request you to briefly introduce yourself.
Sure. First of all, congratulations to all of you for this UVC Chronicles initiative. I'm genuinely happy to be part of it. I'm KS Raghunandan, as you already introduced. Most people call me Raghu. I'm the founder of Elders India, where we partner with corporates to help employees support for their aging parents, and EldersWealth, which focuses on the financial preparedness and security post-retirement. Before this entrepreneurial journey, I spent about 25 years in the corporate world, including more than 20 years with IBM across multiple leadership roles globally, and later as managing director for Cisco's services business for India and South countries. As you know, I completed my engineering from UVC, then did my MBA at IIM Calcutta, and began my career as an engineer with Larsen Toubro. So UVC gave me the start. Go ahead.
Thank you for the introduction, sir. So can you tell us about your family growing up, your childhood influences, and your time at National College? What shaped the young Raghunandan?
I grew up in a simple, grounded environment. My parents were from Mysore district, two different villages, and later settled in Bangalore. I have two elder sisters. Ours was a childhood of simplicity, frugality, values, grounded upbringing. All three of us studied in Kannada medium till the 7th standard. I think my father was the biggest influence in my formative years. He was truly a self-made man. He studied in Mysore only because some relatives were able to support him, and then moved to Bangalore for a job with railways. Much later in life, after 3 kids, supporting his family, managing the work and supporting the parents back at the village, he went on to acquire his professional accounting qualifications. His curiosity, discipline, and commitment to continuous learning, I think, had an impact early on me. And of course, this was the era before the Google and the internet. So if I had to prepare for a debate or write an essay or for anything, the first person I would go to was my father. More than the information, I think what I learned from him is something deeper, what he used to call kartavya prajna, right? Duty consciousness, you might translate. He did what he believed was right consistently, however difficult it was. I was also fortunate to be a witness to a lot of remarkable leaders or teachers. First at Malleshwaram Shishu Vihar, then National Middle School, National High School, and National College, Barswalpudi. I still remember the simplicity, strong values, and the dedication of leaders and teachers like Dr. H. Narasimhaya, Dr. Varadha Deshikachar, Sri S. Deshikachar, Dr. R. Ramchandra, and Dr. G. Ramakrishna, and many others, right? They not only taught subjects, they modeled integrity and excellence. So if I look back, my younger self was probably shaped by those three things, simple living, discipline, and curiosity at home, and maybe inspiration and values from outstanding teachers.
That's lovely, sir. That was really inspirational. So, why did you choose to study mechanical engineering at UVC in the mid 80s? What did a typical day look like back then in workshops, labs, and campus culture?
Why did I choose? To be honest, like many students of that era, I didn't really have any grand plan after my PUC. A lot of the relatives we looked up to were engineers. So engineering seemed to be a good next step if I could get into it. And my father had given a one-line simple guideline: study whatever you want, but study in Bangalore. So affordability was also a very real consideration. I had done reasonably well in PCM. There was no CET then, and I put UC as my first preference, and we went ahead. And you asked about a typical day. Obviously, in the mid-80s, life was very different, right? I used to take a BTS bus from Mahalakshmi Layout to Majestic, and then another to KR Circle. In the first year, I don't know whether people still do. We used to carry the T-square with rolled drawing sheets held together by a rubber band in the BTS bus. So you can imagine. Most of our assignments revolved around labs and workshops. For the theory subjects, there were no internals, no continuous assessments, only one big final exam at the end of the year. Right? So typically only the last few weeks before the final exam, you really felt the heat. And exams postponements are also quite common, right? So much so that we sometimes used to even expect it. So those were some of the memories. And one of the other memories was being part of the organizing team, a 3-member team for the project tour in the final year. And that was a great experience. And, if you may find it amusing, the total cost per head for a 15-day tour was 800 rupees. And look at this, even part of that got reimbursed by the university. Anyway, so those were some of the memories of UVC in that era, and mechanical engineering at UVC was a very formative part of my journey.
There are definitely quite a few experiences that even I can relate to even now.
Okay.
So, yeah. So, what prompted you to pursue a PGDM at IIM Calcutta after UVC? When you headed to IIM Calcutta, what shift in thinking did you have to make, and how was that different from UVC?
Look, after engineering at UVC, I joined Larsen Toubro as a graduate engineer trainee, which frankly was a dream job for many of us at the time. I had some public sector offers as well, but I chose L&T. So in L&T, after orientation at Powai, Mumbai, I came back to Bangalore Works. I chose, they either you could directly join a department or go through a rotational training. So I chose rotational training. I got exposure to shop floor, tool engineering, production planning and control, and so on. A very good grounding in manufacturing. In my second year, I was posted to computer services, and this was a pre-ERP era. Right? A lot of the automation needs were around inventory management, costing, subcontract accounting, payroll, and so on. Right. So the main internal customer for automation was management accounting those days. So I realized I needed a deeper kind of knowledge, both in computer science and management accounting, to understand my own internal customers better and do justice to the work. So what I did, I enrolled at IISc, Indian Institute of Science, They used to have continuing education, proficiency kind of courses. I'm not too sure whether they still have. I enrolled for courses like operating system, database management system, and so on. And in parallel, I enrolled for ICWA. Now it's called CMA. So for that management accounting, I completed the coursework for intermediate and final and so on. But by then, it was clear to me an MBA would give me the breadth and the platform for a larger management career. So I wrote CAT and got into the IIMs, and I chose Calcutta. So that's how I got into IMC. You asked how it was different from USC. It was a big transition, being away from Bangalore, hostel life, food, routines, all that took some adjustment. But academically, it was a big shift. From one annual exam at USC to a trimester system with a midterm in between, it was much more intense, and the learning was very compressed into those 20 months. After the first couple of months, I settled into the rhythm, and I really enjoyed the experience. And in the second year, I was part of the student council, and I was involved in the computerization of the hostels, working closely with the faculty and the students. What else? I majored in finance and systems and joined IBM through the campus placement. IBM was returning back to India, and it seemed quite exciting. So that was the start of the next phase of my journey.
That's really interesting, sir. So, can you walk us through your professional journey from your first role at L&T through your years at IBM across Asia Pacific and Tokyo, up to leading the service business for Cisco in India and the SAARC region? And if you had to distill that into one lesson about leadership, what would that be?
After MBA, I joined IBM, as I mentioned, right, as part of the first batch of MBAs that IBM recruited. IBM had taken a break between 77 and 93. It was not there. It came back in 1993 when I graduated. So initially, I started in sales and consulting kind of role. I was called senior systems executive or something like that. So within a year, I moved to Bangalore to build the business planning and pricing unit. This was probably 94. In 1998, I was part of the core team that set up IBM Global Services in India. All of this till now, we were a joint venture with the Tata Group. IBM Global Services was a 85-15 joint venture. And it was a rare opportunity to build something so foundational. I even wrote the business case. Following that, I became the first international assignee from IBM India to the Asia Pacific headquarters, that was in Tokyo, where I worked in a plan coordination kind of a role with all the Asia Pacific countries and working with the headquarters. That was one role, and the other one was part of Asia Pacific finance leadership team for the services business. So I was there for about 3 years, returned to India as the CFO for IBM India around 2001. And this was during the dot-com bust. So it was a turbulent time, but we stabilized the business, put in place financial discipline, processes, and people that powered the extraordinary growth that followed. It was not even 35 when I took over as a CFO, and those days it was quite a rarity. And in fact, I was recognized by CII as a young achiever and invited to meet the UK Prime Minister, along with achievers from other fields like sports and cinema and arts and other industries. Anyway, so 2 years later, as the CFO, I was asked to take on a turnaround mandate. leading the industrial sector business across ASEAN and South Asia. So I moved from CFO to 100% business leadership role, sales management kind of a role. We turned that unit around. In fact, it became the top performing unit in the region and the top performing region globally in that sector. I then returned to India to lead the incubation of new capabilities for new industry domains, like retail, healthcare, media and entertainment, travel and transportation, energy and utilities, and so on. So we had to hire the talent, outside of the IT industry, from these kind of domains, build solutions, win early deals, and grow these domains at multiples of the average business growth in the country. So in the last two roles, I also had the opportunity to personally lead two of the largest outsourcing deals in automotive industry and in media entertainment industry, which remain among the biggest domestic IT deals in those segments till date. So after that, I led the infrastructure services business for IBM in the country. And nearly 20 years after I joined IBM, I moved to Cisco. And as you know, I served as the managing director for the services business in India and SAARC until 2015. So you asked about one leadership lesson. See, if I compress everything into one sentence, it could be like leadership is about saying yes to uncharted paths and then taking your team across that uncertain path with conviction and clarity. So that pattern of moving into the unknown, building from scratch, turning around what was struggling, it's probably what's been my defining journey.
That is really inspirational, sir. So in 2001, you moved back to India to be closer to your parents. So what prompted that decision and how did that period reshape how you looked at work, life, responsibility, and aging?
So at the end of my Tokyo stint, there was actually a proposal to move to Armonk. Armonk is the global headquarters of IBM. Career-wise, that would have been a natural next step. But around the same time, I felt I'm the only son, my parents are also aging. So something in me was very clear. I wanted to be closer to them. So as destiny would have it, the CFO role in IBM India opened up. So I didn't have to make the painful either or kind of a choice between career growth and personal choice or family responsibility. So I could continue to progress professionally and still be physically present with my parents. And even later, when my roles again, went beyond just the India region, multi-country responsibilities, I made a deliberate choice to be based out of India. And I'm so glad I did. In the years that followed, my father had multiple hospitalizations. And because I was here, I could show up, I could support, and I could be present in a way that would have never been possible otherwise. So that period planted a very deep realization in me that aging is not a topic for later. It interacts deeply with work, career, family, and identity while we are still in our prime. So in many ways, these experiences, being a caregiver while doing a high responsibility work, probably they were the seeds of what later became Elders India.
That's a really new and very wonderful perspective for me. So What was the core belief that led you to start Elders India and later Elders Wealth and Elders Talent? At what moment did you realize that this is not just a family matter but a national scale challenge? And what early evidence or insight convinced you that this needed to become a mission and not just a personal coping mechanism?
The seed really came from my personal experience, as I mentioned, right? So when my father was hospitalized, I realized something very fundamental. Almost nobody is looking at an elderly patient, person holistically. The caregiver, usually the son or daughter, right? Is the one who has to pull together multiple medical opinions, deal with the logistics, take decisions under stress, and make sense of a very fragmented system. And remember, this was 12, 13 years ago, right? We hardly had any geriatricians. Even today, we do not have enough in the country, right? So I began thinking, see, look, I'm not a doctor, but what could I do, right? And one thought kept returning. If someone like me with access, networks, corporate experience struggle, you could well imagine probably millions of other employees in India who are silently juggling work and aging parents. That could also be a reality, right? So that was the moment I realized that this is not just a family matter. This is a structural India level problem because there was also a demographic shift that was occurring. And this demographic shift is change is not waiting for us. It's already here. India is aging rapidly. So in the last 100 years, we are adding almost 4 years per decade in terms of our longevity, right? And at the same time, the fertility ratio is coming down. The number of children is coming down. So less and less children are having to support more and more elders, right? So the burden is falling on the working population. There is also a corporate lens here, right? Employers are they are a key stakeholder because this affects productivity, absenteeism, stress, the overall well-being at the workplace. So, but to even solve this in a meaningful way, you need a national scale because an employee may be in Bangalore, but the parent can be anywhere in the country, isn't it? So the solution cannot be a single city solution. It has to be a platform. It has to be an ecosystem. It has to be pan-India. So that's how Elders India was born. And it took a while for us to build the platform, build the ecosystem within it, and so on. And as we went deeper, we realized there are 3 pillars to aging well. One is, of course, the health. Whether it's physical, mental, social, all of this, right? And the second is wealth. We still have very low financial literacy, and it's lower for those who are 50 plus. So wealth is important. And third one is time. So what do you do with the time? If you have to spend, unlike earlier 5-10 years, if it becomes 40 years, what are you going to do? So Elders Wealth, which is the financial preparedness that I talked about, and Elders Talent, which is about really purposeful living. How do we look at second careers, for example, or learning, or contributing back to the society, or recreation, and so on. So they were natural extensions. Because longevity is not just about living longer, it's about living better. So I think somewhere this is when it stopped being just an individual coping mechanism. It became a mission.
That's a really inspirational story, sir. Again, very new insights. So, how can UVC students and alumni spanning ages from 20 to 82 come together to contribute meaningfully to India's longevity story? beginning with understanding where to start? Is it either engaging with real users in that age, or is it shaping supportive policy so that aging in India is not something that becomes a fear, but maybe a dignified and purposeful stage of life?
It's a very long but very important question. Look, even though I spent almost 9 years, I still believe my experience is still limited. I'm still learning every day from elders, from young people, from life. But longevity is real, right? It's not that you're doing something at UVC, you're graduating, and that's the end of learning. So you got to probably prepare for 2 or 3 careers. If you look at career spanning 60 years, 70 years instead of just the 30 years that we are used to. So longevity is real. There is a very high probability of we living much longer than our previous generation or two. At the same time, we keep hearing of people leaving us so suddenly, yeah, even at an young age, right? So what do we plan for? I'm reminded of a beautiful Subhashita here. I'll just say it in Sanskrit first. Ajara maravat prajna vidyam artham cha sadhayet grihita eva kesheshu rutyuna dharmam acharet. Means a wise person should pursue learning and wealth as if there is no end. They live forever. But they must practice dharma, doing the right thing, which could be supporting others, helping others, caring for loved ones, and so on. They should do that as if death is seizing them by the hair at any moment, right? So you kind of look at both the longevity and the uncertainty at the same time. To me, I think that captures the balance that all generations of UVC from 20 to 82, as you call, can strive for. So we should. It starts with oneself, right? We need to understand. We need to prepare for long lives. But let's act with urgency to do good today, right? If we can do that together, aging in India will not be such a burden or a fear. It can really become a stage for dignity, contribution, and purpose. I think that's how I would put it.
Thank you for that, sir. The Sanskrit quote was absolutely lovely. So I think we've come to the end of today's episode. Thank you so much for joining us today, sir. I am inspired and got to understand some very different perspectives. And I'm sure all our listeners and viewers also have learned a lot and have been inspired as well. Thank you once again for joining us today, sir.
Thank you, Varsha. It's been a pleasure.